Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I am Tracy Cram Perkins, and our show today is Dementia Home Care. I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV and Radio. I am a four-time dementia caregiving survivor and the author of Dementia Home Care, How to Prepare Before, During, and After. And I am so excited. Joining me today is Sheila Warnock, the co-author of Share the Care, How to Organize a Group to Care for Someone Who is Seriously Ill, published by Simon and Schuster. Sheila is a multiple time real life caregiver with many stories to share about the challenges caregivers face, about ways ordinary peoples have come together in extraordinary circumstances, about her decision to leave a successful career and establish a nonprofit organization to educate people and professionals about the benefits of the Share the Care model. She has developed an accredited training for healthcare professionals known as Seeding Share the Care in your community. It's a program, it's all across the country and in Canada, so they can introduce the model to their patients and families in need of support. As a result, she has reached hundreds of thousands of caregivers, many more than one organization could ever do alone. She has inspired even more caregivers and professionals through her lectures, workshops, presentations at national conferences in the US, Canada, and Mexico. Welcome, Sheila. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Oh,
Finally, yes.
yes, yes. Well, for the audience that doesn't know this, Sheila and I have been trying to connect on here for this is, I think, I believe our third time, and we finally made it on the air. So, and I might be wrong, it might be the second, but anyway, we are on the air, and I'm just thrilled to have you here.
Well, it's the challenges of technology sometimes.
Exactly. Well, for those folks in the audience who don't know you, can you explain a little bit how you got started on your journey with Share the Care?
Well, yes, it was a journey I never planned to take ever in my life, which is kind of bizarre when I think about it because my mother was a nurse and my father was a teacher, and those were two things I had no desire to do or pursue. So I was very creative. So I ended up in advertising and doing things like that. But it was real life that brought me to the place of caregiving, which is how almost everybody out there ends up with it. It happens suddenly. It comes without warning. You're unprepared because no one teaches us how to be a caregiver. Um, so I was in the mid 80s. I found myself to be in the position of being my mother's uh, long distance solitary caregiver, which meant I had to give up my job because I couldn't work in New York and take care of her upstate. And so I wasn't making any money. I was isolated from my friends who actually didn't understand what was going on with me. So that was pretty bad. Um, and I kind of fumbled my way through the whole thing, but I really did a great job taking care of my mother. I did a lousy job taking care of me, which is another part of the discussion today. At the same time that my mother needed my help because she was a widow and my brother lived in Japan, um, my best friend Susan found a lump behind her ear that turned out to be a rare terminal cancer. She was a divorced mom with two kids and a high powered job. So it was struggling between trying to help both of them all by myself that I really understand what it means to be a solitary caregiver under difficult circumstances, just like Tracy has had. Um, and then I don't know if you want me to go into the whole story about how Share the Care started, but that's how I got into being a caregiver. I was thrust into the jaws of caregiving, and I really almost had a breakdown, truly. And it took an outside voice of someone saying to me, it was a nurse's aide that I had hired. She just said, because I was living in this bubble, and she said to me, your mother can't be alone anymore. And even though I knew this intellectually, it took someone else to make me realize this is a reality. It's not your imaginations, it's not a dream. So it's very important for people who see caregivers struggling to awaken them to the fact that they're, you know, heading towards trouble.
Oh, I agree. I have, especially the part about everybody falling on you unexpectedly. I mean, because that's how I would say a majority of this happens to
Yeah.
people with their caregiving. And so you took care of your mom, and now after she was done, did you actually go back to work, or is that when you had your travel with
Well,
Susan? So can you give us kind of a timeline?
well, all this started about 1984. And so I was my mother's solitary caregiver for 4 years. So that's 1988. And I was trying to help Susan in between. And actually, in 1988, my mother reached that point where she couldn't be alone anymore, needed round the clock care. So I had to find a nursing home. And that could be another whole book. But I did find one that was close by in New York, well, actually New Jersey, but it wasn't a 5.5 hour trip now. It was only like about 40 minutes. Um, and Susan, my friend Susan, her cancer, even though she had surgery and radiation, and her friends knew about that first incident, they didn't know because I was sworn to secrecy and she kept it a secret, which is very common with people who have some kind of issue. They don't want to share it with anybody. Nobody should know. And also, back at that time, it was, oh my God, she has cancer. Oh my God. It wasn't talked about like it is today. So unbeknownst to them, she went back for more surgery and radiation 3 times because the cancer had metastasized to her skeleton and she had bone cancer. So she reached a crisis, and that's what precipitated something else to happen.
And that is the one thing that I love about you the most is your Share the Care program. Can you talk about what circumstances brought you to putting this program together?
Well, first of all, Susan's crisis, um, fortunately, she was seeing a therapist, Dr. Suki Miller, who is brilliant and who worked with a lot of patients who had terminal illnesses and, went through the end of life and everything. And so it was she who really knew that Susan really had to make a move if she was ever going to survive what she was going through. And so she got Susan to call friends and ask them to come to a meeting at her office the very next night. So Susan called 15 people, and on less than 24 hours' notice, 12 of us showed up in this little office on the east side, and we didn't know each other. I had heard about a lot of them because some were from her office, some were other moms, some were a neighbor, that sort of thing. It was a real mix. And so I walked in the room and I remember feeling, oh, thank God, there's other people being involved now. It's not just me. I don't have anything left. I'm totally drained. And I remember Cappy Capicella, my co-author, who came in and she was terrified. She used to say that she wanted to run for the hills because she had never taken care of anyone or anything in her whole life. And she was sure that she was just going to fail. So the emotions in the room that night as everyone gathered was all kinds of things: skepticism, fear, terror. How am I going to handle this? I've got a lot of everything. And it was Dr. Miller who got the elephant out on the table because she asked Susan, please tell your friends what's really going on with you and what you're afraid of. So for the first time, Susan, told everyone about all the other bouts with her cancer and about the fact she was going to have a test to see if it had gone to her spine. And she was terrified that she wouldn't be able to work or walk or take care of her kids. And she cried. Then we
Oh,
cried.
oh, I'm sure. So now I understand that the seed was planted by Dr. Suki, is that her name? Okay.
Yes, Dr.
So,
Suki Miller. Yes.
okay, Dr. Suki Miller. Okay. So that's what started this Share the Care program. So can you tell us what she suggested?
Well, it wasn't so much that she suggested a lot that night, except to get everyone together, which was huge. That seems to be like, people are, oh, how am I going to do this? Having everyone together in the same room to hear what's really going on with the patient, to understand what the illness is or what's going on, so they could understand what they're going to be dealing with. But also, it was a show of, we love you, Susan, we're here for you. And by having a group work together also meant that, if you didn't show up or you didn't do your part, you had to really kind of respond to the rest of the group, because we were a real team. This was not just do whatever you want whenever you can. It was very specific, and we were all grateful for that. And we figured out that night how we could make this work. There were 12 of us. So we figured we should work in teams of 2. That meant we had 6 teams. We would call the teams captains of the week. And the job of the captains of the week was to go to Susan to find out what she needed for the coming week, so that we, the 2 captains, could call everybody else, because there was no internet, there was no, iPhones, there was nothing, there were no books, there was nothing, there were no organizations. So we would call everybody else on the phone, get the jobs filled, and give Susan a schedule of who was going to come when to do what, for how long, so she could relax, knowing that her needs were going to be taken care of. And then the next week, a fresh team would rotate in. And it meant that you were captain once every 6 weeks, which was very doable. And the rest of the time, you just did whatever your normal routine was in terms of the kind of help you chose to do. This also took away a huge burden from Susan. And this happens with everybody who needs help. They hate asking for help. I mean, it's hard, it's difficult, and it's embarrassing, and it's all these other things. But we went to her every week. Unless there was an emergency, she never had to call us. We always went to her. And we started in the next day. And for 3.5 years, we did everything you could imagine, from getting the air conditioner fixed in August to organizing her daughter's wedding just a few months before Susan passed away. And we became widely known in New York City as Susan's Funny Family. So, when Susan passed away and we had that wedding right beforehand, that was like the most perfect thing we could have done for her. It was under her direction, as if she were doing the wedding herself. And it was beautiful. And we knew we did a good thing after Susan died, but we had no idea how good at that point.
That leads me to the next question, because it sounds like the group at that point was so incredibly bonded. So
Yes.
what did that do for all of you for your grieving process?
Well, it certainly helped, because we got together and had like a closing meeting. Now we have like kind of an official one that we've dreamed up for Share the Care groups, but it was very important to be with people who had been down the road together, because they understood all the things that we felt and thought and went through, because nobody else could really understand it unless they were in it. So, we talked about, oh, we should have, could have, no, we shouldn't have, could have, we did the best we could do, kind of thing. And it was very healing to come together and just be together. And remember Susan, and remember what we did. And it's a very important part of any Share the Care group once they get, going.
I love that. I think that's the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is the bonding effect because if I understand correctly, you still stay in contact with several of the people that were in that group. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of them have passed on since that time because this was, let's see, Susan passed away about 19. Let me see. I get all my dates all crazy now. I think it was around like 91, 92, something like that. Um, and it was hard, but we got an opportunity to make use of what we had learned
So,
on the way. You know what I mean? We didn't even know what we were learning on the way, but we found out shortly thereafter when Cappy and I used to work in advertising together. We were a creative team and we worked on fragrances for men and women and, bath and body product, all this stuff where you could take all your romantic fantasies and put them into a commercial and go shoot it. It was like a dream job, and we loved working together. And one day we were doing something for a new commercial, and the phone rang, and there was this woman on the line, and she said, "You don't know me, but uh, I used to see Susan at cancer care at the support group, for patients. And she used to talk about her funny family all the time. And she said, I'm kind of like Susan. I'm divorced. I have a young daughter. I have an elderly mother. I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I'm about to have a bone marrow transplant, which requires a lot of care. They can't take care of me. But I've got 20 friends that want to help. Do you think I could have a funny family?" So Cappy and I looked at each other kind of in like, oh my God, can this happen? So we called together our team to meet with her 20 friends. And it was deja vu. It was very bizarre. It was in the group that came in of these 20 people, there were men in this group. And they came in just like we had the first night. They didn't say a word, but you could see it in their body language and their faces that some of them were nervous, some of them were, oh, I'm going to do what I can here for my friend, or what is this thing? What is this group? I never heard of anything like this. But as we spoke, as we explained to them how we did rotating sharing of the care and working together to solve issues as a team, coming up and using everybody's experience and ideas, that they began to relax. I mean, it's almost like they were saying out loud, but they didn't say a word. Oh, that's what they did? We could do this. This isn't hard. This makes a lot of sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they were gearing up. They could hardly wait to get out of there and start their own meeting to organize for their friend, Francine. And at the same time, the room was filled with so much love, you could cut it with a knife. So the next morning, I called up Cappy and I said, Cappy, this has to go down on paper. We got to make it so nobody has to reinvent this wheel. And that's what took the ball rolling. And we wrote a book, Share the Care, how to organize a group to care for someone seriously ill. Now I would say for anybody needing help. It could be for anything throughout the full life cycle where someone needs support. And it was published by Simon & Schuster. And at the time, like I said before, there was nothing out there like it. So it spread like fire. It was all over the place, mostly by word of mouth. So we would get telephone calls and letters and not emails, but notes thanking us for writing the book because it helped a lot of people out there. And it spread. It just spread. It was amazing.
That leads me to my next question, actually.
Oh,
You said that there's other things. I know we talked about this though. You'll expect this. You said you have a dementia care protocol that you are looking to release in your next book. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
yes, I'd love to. Um, First of all, I'm so happy to have connected with you, Tracy, because your book, Dementia Home Care, is like a perfect partner for a team using Share the Care for a loved one with dementia or Alzheimer's or Lewy body or whatever. Um, because it's so practical and so easy to use, and you find everything you want at your fingertips. But yes, over time, we have seen that Share the Care was used more and more for the most difficult of circumstances, like ALS and, you know, really terrible diseases where someone becomes totally helpless. And then we started seeing a lot of people who needed help with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And that certainly is an area that has grown so much over the years. In fact, it even touched my family. Um, Even though I wasn't a caregiver for my brother, his daughters were, and he had Louis's body, which I witnessed happening over time every time I would go to visit, and it was heartbreaking. And so I understand how heartbreaking it is for so many people out there who have a loved one with this disease. But so it became something we had to focus on. So I started talking to a lot of our Share the Care group people or people who learned about Share the Care who had been dementia care caregivers. And their stories were really hard because, again, people hide the fact this is happening, or also there are people who live alone who are stricken with dementia, or maybe have no family nearby, and they certainly need the help of friends and neighbors and coworkers. So we saw a need for adjusting the Share the Care model to work for a patient who had dementia or Alzheimer's. And that meant, and also this worked during COVID, I suggested it during COVID, that you can't have 10, 12 people coming in and out of the house when somebody is, has this issue. It's too frightening. They need structure. They need everything to be the same and organized, and they can't be overwhelmed by anything. So the idea with the group is that you have two groups in a Share the Care group, the inner group and an outer group. And the inner group would be made up of a small number of people, 4 or 5 people who know the patient very well, who are not afraid of working with someone who has Alzheimer's or dementia. And also, we encourage Share the Care groups or people working in them to take some classes with the local, Alzheimer's Foundation or Alzheimer's organizations, because so many classes are offered out there, because no person with this disease or any other dementia is exactly the same. They're all different. So you can't just expect to know what to do. So it's very important to become educated. And also, that's why your book is so important, because it's like an education in itself about taking care of them at home. So the inner group are the only people that really come in and out of the home. Um, and then the outer group can do all kinds of other jobs that don't require being with the patient or interacting with them even. So people who are afraid of anything, they don't have to come in the house. They don't have to interact. They just can go shopping. They can mow the lawn, they can rake the leaves, they can pick up the kids from school, they can drive them to soccer, they can um, go shopping for whatever's needed in the home. They could cook, they could, you name it, and they could do it. It doesn't matter. But the important thing is that you're still connected as one group, but you have very specific, different kinds of jobs. And it's also worked with people who had nobody. So a small group of people really has to become like family and also be very observant of what's going on with the person so that if it reaches a point where something is going on that they really don't know how to handle, that they can get support immediately from healthcare professionals who can come in and assess the needs of that person and, you know, make changes from there. But also, the way Share the Care works is we have specialist captains for certain jobs. Um, like someone who takes care of paying the bills. That's usually someone who's close to the person, who's very good at doing that kind of a job, and who's to be trusted. So these are not jobs that are just shuffled around between people. You have specialists who will be working with the patient and their care providers who will go with them to uh, their doctor's appointments or their medical appointments and keep track of things so that they can keep information up to date. And we have a wonderful way of keeping all the information about a patient up to date in a very easy way. And that's very specific in the book. And the specialist captains, there might be someone, maybe that person has a dog. So maybe you need a specialist captain who takes the dog for walks and makes sure the dog goes to the groomer once in a while and is well taken care of and gets food and all that sort of thing. So you have to take care of everybody involved in that person's life. And there's just so many other things that we talk about. The power of touch and the power of, just really being with someone and listening to them and showing your love to them because they can feel it even if they don't think it. You know what I mean? And it's a great learning experience. And even if it's a guy and you have some of their friends come in and bang on some wood to make something, it doesn't matter what it looks like, they're keeping their friend engaged and loved.
So that makes me think of another thing here. Um, you have been doing this for so long. What has been some of your favorite feedback because of this program? Because I know it's touched so many people.
Yes, I mean, I have no idea how many people, it's so vast, but it always pleases me when I learn about someone in Tasmania doing it or someone in, Mexico or Spain or wherever. They're all over the place. But I think I was thinking about this, and probably the greatest feedback Cappy and I both got came very early on after the book was published. Like I said, it was 1995 when there was nothing out there. And we had the great fortune of having a full page story about Share the Care and how it came about, etc., in the Washington Post. I mean, this was like, wow, fantastic. And we were thrilled about that, and people read it. And then a few weeks later, maybe it was a couple months later, my sister-in-law, because my brother and sister-in-law lived in Maryland, she sent me another article from the Washington Post that was a follow-up to the first. And it was about a woman who read the first article about Share the Care, said, oh, I want to help my friend so-and-so because, wow, this could really work. We have a whole jazzercise class that, I could tap into to help, we need to raise money to pay for her bills, and this is that. And she has a little daughter and her husband, and they're struggling. So anyway, this woman organized a Share the Care group using the book, and they were going to have a fundraiser to help pay for some of the bills. And so when Cappy and I read that story, it was like, it works, it works. We broke down in tears. It was confirmation that you could pick up the book, and how we had written it made it possible to replicate without any problems. And so it has for the past, 38 years. So that was probably the highlight, I mean, I've had other wonderful, wonderful things. And I do put quotes on our website and everything. Our website, by the way, is sharethecare.org. Please explore it and look around, and a lot of things can be downloaded from it. All the forms in the book. There are a number of forms that we actually color-coded. And if you were using them, they would, some would be yellow pages for contacts, or pink pages for caring schedules, or blue pages for forms that are used in the very first meeting. So there's a lot on there. But we broke the website into different sections for the caregiver and their friends, for health professionals, because when they learn about this and they take the course, they can explain it succinctly to their patients and their families that they see every single day, because they see so many more than I'll ever see in a lifetime. Faith communities, another place where Share the Care has been used extensively. And then, of course, the workplace, helping each other. So those are the areas you can take a look at and see what's evolved.
Oh, I just love this, Sheila. So we have about 5 minutes left. Is there any other things or tidbits that you would like to share with everybody?
Well, I would just like to share that there is nothing like this out there. Yes, there are lots of organizing tools, online and everything, for bringing dinners or doing, little things, but everybody's operating on their own. You know what I mean? Nobody's connected. It's a great way to get help right away fast. That's great. All help is needed. But what I try to explain to people about Share the Care, it's caregiving on a deep, deep, heart-centered place. It's very living in the moment and dealing with reality. There's no running away from anything. But by doing that, makes you such a strong caregiver that you can go on to help other people at other times, or introduce them to this method. So having that first meeting, sometimes people say, oh, do we really have to have that meeting? Yes, that's what makes the difference. Having everyone in the same room at the same time, hearing the same thing and learning the same things about Share the Care together, knowing you're a team, creating that name of whatever your family or group will be called, and also depending on each other, backing up each other. Knowing you have people backing you up is a huge relief, I think, especially today, because our caregiving, well, it's not so much our caregiving, but our healthcare system is so complicated that you need all the help you can get to wade through all the different things. And this is a program that doesn't require you to pay anything, be a certain age, have a certain illness, live in a certain place, or any restrictions. It's up to you to take it and run with it and make it your own, because it's flexible enough to be used to help quadruplets all the way through end of life. And you will become a very you will realize that you have grown immensely. You will realize you have strengths you never knew existed. And that to me is what living a good life is all about.
Oh, I just want to hug you right now. I I am such a huge proponent of this program. Every talk I give, I always include a mention of your book. And if Simon and Schuster is ever watching this, please, please, please pick up and do her third edition. I'm begging you, please do that.
Yes, yes, please do. Well, thank you, Tracy. But also, I'm telling you, your book is a great partner book with this. This is like, because it's so practical. And that's what people have to figure out. It's common sense, a lot of it. And also experience. God knows you've had a lot of experience.
I'm just I'm happy I can laugh about it now. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, end of life care, no matter what the cause is a very, very difficult thing to do. And so it's the fact that your program is so incredibly bonding. Um, I think since this is post-pandemic, it's even more crucial at this point because we are so fractured and just trying to have something where we can get together and work. And it fills a missing part of the soul. There's a part in the book that you talk about how it was transformative to the people and how they felt before and after. And that's one of the things that I really connected with because it takes you from being, let's say, self-centered to caring. It's just really an amazing, amazing tool.
Yes, that actually is an exercise in the meeting. That's at the beginning of the meeting and at the end that shows people or makes them think, when I came in, I felt this way, but when I left, I feel this way. It's a lot more hopeful.
Oh, well, we're just about out of time now, and so I just want to thank you so much for being my guest and coming on to the show today.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so happy you were here. And and I also want to thank our audience for spending your time with us. We'll be back in September with another episode of the Dementia Home Care Show. In the meantime, you can go over to our YouTube channel at USA Global TV and Radio and look for the Dementia Home Care playlist where you can find all of our past episodes. Thank you to the wonderful Dr. Jacqueline for all of her work behind the scenes today, and thank you to our sponsors for making this possible. See you next time, everybody.